Have you ever wondered how a civilization that flourished thousands of years ago managed to build such a vast and enduring empire, governed by leaders who were seen as gods on earth? Ancient Egypt was not just a land of pyramids and mummies. It was the cradle of a unique political system, where the power of the pharaohs was not limited to the borders of the kingdom, but extended into the divine realms. And what if I told you that much of what we know about leadership, power, and even political strategy has its roots in the reigns of these ancient monarchs? Get ready for a journey where we will unveil the secrets of the most influential pharaohs and explore how they shaped Egypt's destiny with iron hands and strategic minds. On this journey, you will discover truths that may challenge what you thought you knew about power and its application. If you are ready to dive into history and learn from the masters of the past, stay with me. The reward will be a new understanding of how power truly works, whether in the past or today. Imagine, for a moment, the scene in 5500 BC, where small groups of tribes began migrating to the fertile Nile Valley. This movement was no accident. There was something magical about the riverbanks that promised life and prosperity. These tribes, coming from various regions, found in the Nile's waters the key to survival and growth. There, in a land as rich as the stories that would later be told, the first villages emerged, which would later transform into powerful civilizations known for their wealth and cultural advancement. These early communities, located both in Upper and Lower Egypt, quickly learned to take advantage of the Nile's seasonal floods. Each flood deposited a layer of fertile silt on the banks, essential for agriculture. It was as if the gods had given the Egyptians the perfect gift, a natural cycle that nourished the plants and, consequently, the population. It's interesting to think that without this natural blessing, we might never have heard of iconic figures like Ramses and Cleopatra. As these settlements grew, the foundation for Egyptian civilization began to form. Over time, the small villages became cities, and these cities in turn gave rise to kingdoms. This was the first step in a journey that would lead to the emergence of one of the greatest civilizations in history. And we can't help but wonder, without this initial migration, what would have become of the mythology and rich history that ancient Egypt left as a legacy? And so, with this reflection, we begin to understand the crucial importance that the Nile River played in this evolution. The Nile River, often called the Great River by the Egyptians, was much more than just a watercourse. It was the very essence of life in ancient Egypt. Imagine a people who depended entirely on the annual floods of this river to survive and prosper. The waters of the Nile brought with them the fertility needed to grow food, which ensured the continuity of Egyptian civilization. It's almost impossible to think of Egyptian history without considering the central role of this river, which in the eyes of the ancients was a gift from the gods. Agriculture, which developed along the Nile's banks, was what allowed the great Egyptian civilizations to flourish. The flood cycle, predictable and regular, gave farmers the confidence to plan their crops and ensure that the Egyptian people would never go hungry. It was a true miracle of nature, something that helps us understand why the Nile was so revered and considered sacred. The wheat, barley, and other grain fields that grew along the Nile not only fed the people but also sustained the economies of entire cities. The Nile's impact went beyond agriculture. It influenced all aspects of Egyptian life, from religion to architecture. The river was a vital vein that connected Upper and Lower Egypt, facilitating trade and communication. Boats sailed its waters, carrying goods, ideas, and culture. The Nile was not just a river. It was the backbone of the Egyptian empire, without which the pharaohs would not have achieved the greatness we know today. And so, we begin to see how the unification of Egypt, under the command of King Narmer, was made possible thanks to this vital artery that cut through the heart of the country. The unification of Egypt was a decisive milestone in ancient history, a true turning point that shaped the future of one of the most remarkable civilizations the world has ever known. Around 3000 BC, King Narmer, a figure shrouded in mystery and legends, managed to accomplish what many thought impossible. He unified Upper and Lower Egypt, thus creating the first pharaonic dynasty. This achievement was not just a military victory. It was the foundation of an empire that would become synonymous with power and grandeur. From that moment on, Egypt was seen as a unique nation, with a strong identity and a culture that would flourish for millennia. Unification brought not only peace between the two kingdoms, but also an era of prosperity and cultural advancements. Under Narmer's rule, Egypt experienced impressive growth in all areas: agriculture, arts, religion, and the construction of monuments. The capital, Memphis, strategically located at the meeting point between Upper and Lower Egypt, became the beating heart of this newly unified nation. This city was not just the administrative center of the empire. It was a symbol of unity and strength, where the power of the pharaohs became increasingly consolidated. And it's fascinating to think that this unification was just the beginning of a series of monumental achievements. Narmer, by unifying Egypt, laid the foundations for the following dynasties, which would raise the Grand Pyramids, the eternal symbol of Egyptian civilization. These constructions, which would emerge in the next period, the Old Kingdom, were more than just tombs. They were the ultimate expression of pharaonic power and the Egyptian belief in the afterlife. In the next topic, we will explore how these pyramids became iconic and enduring monuments. The pyramids of Egypt, especially those at Giza, are undeniable icons of human ingenuity, and their construction during the Old Kingdom marked an era of unprecedented architectural splendor. Imagine what it took to erect these colossal structures, which were not just funerary monuments but authentic declarations of power and divinity. The pharaohs who built them, such as Khufu, wanted to ensure that their names and legacies would endure forever, and indeed, they succeeded. Through these pyramids, they not only honored the gods, but also solidified their own immortality. The process of building the pyramids is, in itself, one of the greatest achievements of Egyptian civilization. Without modern tools, the ancient Egyptians used their incredible skills in mathematics, engineering, and organization to lift stones weighing tons, stacking them with millimeter precision. Thousands of workers, artisans, and engineers dedicated themselves to these monumental works, which took decades to complete. Each stone block was carefully carved and transported over miles, using techniques that still amaze us today. The pyramids were more than tombs. They were works of art, sanctuaries of power, and temples that honored the complex Egyptian mythology. These constructions became the ultimate symbol of the Old Kingdom, representing not only the power of the pharaohs, but also the unwavering belief in the afterlife. The pyramids were designed to protect the mummified body of the pharaoh and ensure his journey to the afterlife, where he would continue to rule alongside the gods. And so, while these magnificent structures rose in the desert, another crucial aspect of Egyptian civilization was flourishing: military expansion. Pharaohs like Thutmose III would lead Egypt into a new era of conquests, ensuring that the empire grew and strengthened even more. Military conquests were fundamental to the expansion and maintenance of the Egyptian empire, especially during the New Kingdom period. Pharaohs like Thutmose III are remembered not only for their ability to govern, but also for their skill in leading armies and campaigns that took Egypt to the height of its territorial power. Under his leadership, Egypt expanded its borders beyond the Nile, conquering lands that stretched from Nubia in the south to Syria in the north. These military victories not only brought wealth and resources to the empire, but also solidified the pharaoh's power as uncontested leaders, whose orders were seen as divine. Thutmose III, often called the Napoleon of Egypt, conducted more than 17 military campaigns during his reign, demonstrating impressive strategy and military organization. His victories were not merely territorial expansions. They were also displays of force that sent a clear message to Egypt's neighbors. The pharaoh's power was absolute and unquestionable. These conquests were made possible by a well-trained and equipped army, which used war chariots, composite bows, and advanced tactics to defeat its enemies. The conquered lands not only increased Egyptian influence, but also ensured a steady flow of tributes and slaves, which were essential for the empire's economic development. Military conquests shaped Egypt's identity as an ancient superpower, But this era of expansion also brought new challenges. Maintaining control over vast territories required not only military strength, but also diplomacy and efficient administration. The pharaohs had to balance expansion with the consolidation of power at home, which brings us to another fundamental aspect of Egyptian civilization: religion and the role of the pharaohs as gods on earth. This balance between the sword and the scepter was essential for the maintenance of the empire. And in the next topic, we will see how the belief in the pharaoh's divinity legitimized their power and ensured the loyalty of the people. At the heart of Egyptian civilization was the unwavering belief that the pharaohs were living gods, direct descendants of Horus, the falcon god, who symbolized the sky and royalty. This divine connection was not just a matter of faith. It legitimized the pharaoh's absolute power and consolidated Egypt's social and political structure. From the moment a pharaoh ascended to the throne, he was seen as the incarnation of Horus on earth, an intermediary between the gods and men. This idea permeated all aspects of Egyptian life, from major political decisions to daily religious rituals. The pharaohs were not merely earthly rulers. They played a central role in maintaining cosmic order, known to the Egyptians as Ma'at. This concept of justice, balance, and truth was fundamental to the functioning of the universe, and the pharaoh was responsible for ensuring that Ma'at was preserved. This belief granted the pharaohs almost unlimited authority, and their decrees were seen as emanating from the gods themselves. As the supreme religious leader, the pharaoh oversaw the great temples, where elaborate rituals and offerings were performed to appease the deities and ensure Egypt's prosperity. This relationship between religion and power was also reflected in Egyptian art and architecture. Temples and monuments were not merely engineering feats, but also physical manifestations of the pharaoh's divinity. Every statue, every relief was an expression of the divine power that emanated from the pharaoh. However, this divinity also imposed great responsibilities on the pharaoh, particularly concerning beliefs in the afterlife. The preservation of the pharaoh's body and soul was crucial for the continuity of his existence in the beyond, leading us to one of Egypt's most emblematic practices: mummification and the construction of monumental tombs. These practices reflect the Egyptians' deep belief in the afterlife, which we will explore in the next topic. The belief in the afterlife was one of the cornerstones of Egyptian civilization, profoundly influencing its religious, cultural, and social practices. For the Egyptians, death was not the end, but a gateway to a new existence, a journey that would lead the individual to the afterlife, where they would continue to live fully. This belief was so strong that it permeated all layers of society, but especially the royalty. The pharaohs, being considered living gods, had the responsibility to ensure not only their own immortality, but also that of their people by maintaining cosmic order. Mummification, an intricate and sacred practice, was developed precisely to ensure that the pharaoh's body was preserved for this afterlife. The Egyptians believed that for the soul to continue its journey in the beyond, it was crucial for the body to remain intact. Therefore, a rigorous embalming process was carried out, involving the removal of internal organs and the use of resins and oils to preserve the body. The tombs, in turn, were carefully prepared, with walls decorated with scenes guiding the pharaoh on his passage to the afterlife, and with all the items he would need in the eternal life. These monumental tombs, such as the pyramids and mortuary complexes, were more than just resting places. They were true portals to eternity. Every detail, from the tomb's orientation to the sacred texts engraved on the walls, was designed to help the pharaoh overcome the challenges he would encounter in the afterlife. These beliefs in resurrection and the continuity of life gave Egypt a unique and deeply spiritual culture, where death was viewed with reverence and not fear. However, despite all this preparation for eternity, Egypt was not immune to the influence of other cultures and foreign powers, as we will see in the following topic on the influence and decline of this grand civilization. For centuries, Egypt was one of the most powerful and influential civilizations of the ancient world, but like all great powers, it also faced challenges that led to its decline. Over the years, Egypt was the target of several invasions, with the Hittites being among the first to confront Egyptian power. These confrontations not only drained the empire's resources, but also revealed internal weaknesses. Over time, other powers, such as the Assyrians and Persians, also saw Egypt as a prize to be conquered, further weakening the nation. The arrival of the Greeks, led by Alexander the Great in 332 BC, marked the beginning of a new era in which Egypt would become part of a much larger empire. Under Greek and later Roman rule, Egypt continued to be a region of strategic and economic importance, but its political independence had faded. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, is often remembered for her desperate struggle to keep Egypt independent, using both diplomacy and personal alliances with powerful figures like Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. However, her efforts were in vain, and after her death, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. The civilization that had dominated the Nile Valley for millennia now became part of a foreign empire, and with this, many of its traditions and structures were assimilated or abandoned. Despite the political decline, Egypt's cultural influence continued to spread, leaving a lasting legacy that still fascinates the modern world. The monumental architecture, refined art, and rich mythology of Egypt were absorbed by its conquerors and, through them, transmitted to future generations. Ancient Egypt may have lost its autonomy, but its culture remained alive, influencing Western civilization and beyond. The history of Egypt, with its ups and downs, reminds us that even the greatest civilizations are subject to the forces of time and change. Now that we have journeyed through this rich tapestry, it's time to reflect on the role of the pharaohs in this complex and fascinating political system, as will be explored in the next step. After diving into the rich tapestry of ancient Egypt, there is no denying the lasting impact that the pharaohs had not only on their own civilization, but also on the course of human history. But what can we learn from these ancient masters of power? Have you ever stopped to think about how the lessons of leadership and strategy from the pharaohs could be applied to your own life? What changes could you implement today if you adopted the long-term vision and determination that defined these iconic figures? Don't let this knowledge be lost to the past. Apply it, question it, and see how it can transform your perspective. And remember, learning never ends. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue exploring these and other fascinating topics. Because, just like the pharaohs, you too can leave a legacy that transcends time.